You deserve better, signed the Mafia boss, who had just watched the poor deaf girl being rejected and mistreated on her blind date. Subscribe now, or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. Let's dive in. The rain hadn't started yet, but Carol Monroe could feel it coming. She checked her phone again, 7:47 p.m., 17 minutes late. She'd been at this corner table at Vincent's for 43 minutes total, because she was always early. Because punctuality was one of the few things she could still control in a life that had spun sideways 5 years ago when meningitis stole her hearing at 19. The waiter had refilled her water 3 times. She'd memorized the menu twice. She was acutely aware of pitying glances from other diners, couples who'd arrived after her, ordered, eaten, while she sat alone in her red dress that had cost 2 weeks' salary. Stop it, she signed to herself under the table. He's just running late. Across the restaurant, in a private booth separated by frosted glass, Matteo Russo watched the woman in red check her phone for the 6th time. He shouldn't have noticed her. He had 3 lieutenants at the table, Vince, Marco, and Danny, discussing a shipment problem that could cost $2 million. But something about the way her shoulders gradually curved inward over 40 minutes made his jaw tighten. "Boss?" Vince's voice cut through. "You listening?" Matteo's dark eyes flicked back. "The supplier wants 30%. Counter with 15. Settle at 20. If he pushes, remind him what happened to the last greedy man." His voice was flat, emotionless, the tone that made him one of Chicago's most feared men by 32. The restaurant door opened. A man in an expensive suit walked in, scanning the room with self-assurance. 23 minutes late. Matteo watched the woman in red light up, standing slightly, relief flooding her face. The late arrival walked toward her with swagger. Sorry, Marcus said loudly. "Work crisis. You know how it is." Carol's hands moved. Matteo's attention sharpened. She was signing as she spoke. "No problem. I'm just glad you made it. I'm Carol." Her voice had that particular quality Matteo recognized immediately. His sister Lucia was deaf. He knew the sound of someone who'd lost hearing after learning to speak. Marcus scrolled through his phone. "Yeah, listen, I can't stay long. Got a thing at 9. The light dimmed in Carol's eyes. "Oh, should we order then?" "Sure." Marcus finally looked up and his expression changed. His gaze caught on her ears. On hearing aids her hair didn't quite hide. Matteo's hand stopped mid-reach for his whiskey. "Wait!" Marcus leaned forward. Are you deaf?" Carol's composure cracked. "I have moderate to severe hearing loss. I mentioned it in my profile. You said hearing difficulties." Marcus made air quotes. "I thought you meant you needed things repeated sometimes, not that you were actually—" He gestured at her ears. "Handicapped." The word fell like a stone. An older couple nearby stopped eating. A woman in a business suit turned to stare. In the private booth, Matteo Russo's knuckles went white. "I'm not handicapped," Carol said steadily, though her hands trembled. "I'm deaf. I'm a sign language interpreter for Cook County courts. I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern. Look." Marcus reached for his wallet. "I'm gonna be straight. This isn't what I signed up for. I don't do damaged goods." Carol flinched. "Think about it from my perspective," Marcus continued. "Every restaurant would be a hassle. I'd have to repeat everything. My friends would never let me hear the end of it, no pun intended, dating someone who can't even hear properly." "It's not genetic," Carol whispered. "I had meningitis. I almost died. Whatever. Point is, you weren't honest. You catfished me." Marcus dropped 2 20s on the table. "That should cover your cab home. To whatever sad life you've got." He stood, adjusted his tie. "Maybe try Christian mingle. Find some church guy who wants a charity case." Matteo was moving before his brain registered the decision. "Boss," Vince started. Matteo held up one hand. "Stay," and walked out with predatory grace. His $3,000 suit fit perfectly across shoulders that had broken bones. Other diners instinctively moved back as he passed. Marcus was almost to the door, but Matteo didn't walk toward Marcus. He walked to Carol's table where she sat frozen, trying to decide whether to leave immediately or order something to save face, calculating the least humiliating exit. He knew that calculation, had seen it on Lucia's face too many times. Matteo stopped directly in front of her table. Carol looked up, startled, finding a man who looked like he'd walked out of a movie about dangerous people. Dark hair swept back, sharp angles, eyes that had seen things that made decent people flinch. But Matteo's hands were already moving. His fingers shaped words with unexpected grace. He signed slowly, deliberately, making sure she could see every movement in the candlelight. "You deserve better than garbage." Carol's breath caught audibly. This stranger, this man who radiated danger, was signing to her. American Sign Language, fluent, natural. Around them, other diners watched in confusion. Matteo's hands moved again. "Men like that don't deserve to breathe your air." "Who?" Carol's voice cracked. "Who are you?" Matteo glanced at the empty chair, then back to her. He signed and spoke simultaneously. "Someone who knows you didn't deserve that. May I?" Carol should have said no, should have recognized the warning signs, the deference from staff, the way the manager appeared looking nervous, the expensive watch, the scar above his left temple. Instead, she nodded. Matteo sat with fluid grace, signing to the waiter. 2 menus, wine list. The waiter practically ran. "You sign," Carol said. "You actually sign." "My sister, Lucia, she's deaf. Born that way." Pride softened his dangerous face. 24 now, teaching deaf education on the South Side. I learned when I was 16. "Your sister's lucky." Something dark flickered across his expression. "I'm not sure luck is the right word for anything connected to me." They talked about Lucia's school, Carol's work interpreting in courts, the ways the world failed deaf people. Matteo ordered for them both, somehow knowing she'd prefer salmon, asparagus, Pinot Grigio. "Everyone here is terrified of you," Carol observed. "Yes. Why?" "Because of what I am, what I do, which is nothing you want to know about on a first meeting." Carol studied him. Is this a first meeting? Or pity? Neither. Matteo's hands moved with his words. "This is me unable to watch someone diminish you without saying, 'You are not less than. You are not damaged. You are extraordinary, and any man who can't see that is blind in ways that can't be fixed.'" Tears escaped. Carol brushed them away. "You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you showed up despite fear, held your head high when he tried to break you. You're still here." Matteo leaned forward. "And I know that dress is stunning. That smile before he arrived could light cities, and any man who walks away is a fool." Carol laughed wetly. "You're either very kind or very dangerous." "Both," Matteo said simply. "Always both." Hours passed like minutes. Finally, Matteo's phone buzzed. His expression hardened into something cold and lethal. "I have to go. Business that can't wait." But as he stood, he placed a card on the table. Just a phone number embossed in black. "If you're brave enough," he signed, "call me tomorrow. I'd like to see you again. Not because you need saving, but because I haven't had a conversation this honest in 5 years." Carol picked up the card. "And if I'm not brave enough, then I'll remember tonight as the moment I met someone extraordinary." His hands moved one last time. "But I hope you're brave, because I think you're exactly the kind of dangerous I've been missing." He walked away, his men materializing from corners, falling into formation. Carol sat alone again, but this time differently. She looked at the card, then at the empty seat where 2 very different men had sat tonight. One had tried to diminish her. The other had seen her. Her phone buzzed. "Zoe, how'd it go?" Terrible, then complicated, then possibly insane. But as she stood to leave, Carol knew one thing with certainty. She was going to call that number. She was going to be brave. Outside, rain finally falling, Matteo sat in his SUV, Vince driving. His phone buzzed. Supplier situation, shipment delayed, rival family making moves. But all he could think about was green eyes and graceful hands. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Carol. From Vincent's. Texting now so you have my number, in case I lose my nerve by tomorrow. Something in Mateo's chest shifted. I'm glad you didn't wait. Are you home safely? Yes. Good tears now. The kind you get when a stranger reminds you that you're not what cruel people say you are. You never were. Call me tomorrow. Or tonight. Whatever you're brave enough for. Tonight then. In 10 minutes. When his phone rang exactly 10 minutes later, Matteo Russo, who controlled half of Chicago's underworld, who'd killed men with his bare hands, smiled for the first time in months. Hello, Carol. Hello, Matteo. So, tell me about these less legitimate businesses. In the driver's seat, Vince saw his boss's expression transform and knew everything was about to change. Because dangerous men who found something worth protecting were the most dangerous of all. And Matteo Russo had just found his reason. Carol's apartment was dark when she arrived home, rain drumming against windows like impatient fingers. She dropped her keys twice before unlocking the door, her hands still trembling from adrenaline and wine and the surreal turn her evening had taken. Her phone sat heavy in her purse. Matteo's number glowed in her recent calls. 43 minutes of conversation that had felt like stepping off a cliff in the dark, not knowing if there was ground below or endless falling. She kicked off her heels, the red dress suddenly feeling like someone else's costume. In the bathroom mirror, she studied her reflection. Mascara slightly smudged, lipstick worn away, hearing aids visible now that she'd pushed her hair back. The devices that Marcus had looked at with disgust, that Matteo had barely glanced at, as if they were no more remarkable than earrings. Her phone buzzed. A text from Zoe. Girl. Details. Now. Carol typed back. Tomorrow. I promise. Still processing. Is processing code for he was awful and you're crying? No. Processing is code for he was awful. Then a Mafia boss intervened, and now I don't know what my life is. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, what? Tomorrow. Breakfast. Lose. 9 a.m. I'll be there at 8:45. Do not leave out a single detail. Carol smiled despite herself, then caught sight of the card on her nightstand. Heavy stock, expensive, just 10 digits embossed in black. She'd held it the entire Uber ride home, running her thumb over the numbers like a talisman. She shouldn't call him. She knew that with the certainty of someone who'd worked in the criminal justice system for 3 years, who'd interpreted for mob trials, who understood exactly what family business and less legitimate meant in Chicago. Matteo Russo was dangerous, not metaphorically, actually literally dangerous. But when her phone rang at midnight, his name on the screen, Carol answered on the second ring. I know it's late. Matteo's voice came through, lower than in the restaurant, rougher. But I wanted to make sure you got home safely. You texted me 2 hours ago asking the same thing. That was different. That was polite follow-up. This is me unable to stop thinking about whether you're okay after what that bastard did. Carol sat on her bed, tucking her feet under her. I'm okay. I've dealt with worse than Marcus. You shouldn't have to deal with any of it. Matteo paused. I looked him up. Marcus Chen. Works in tech sales, lives in Lincoln Park. Has a DUI from 2 years ago. He got reduced to reckless driving. Daddy's a lawyer. You looked him up? Carol's voice rose. In the past 2 hours? I have resources, and I wanted to know who I was letting walk out of that restaurant. Letting walk out. Silence on the other end, heavy with implication. Then, poor choice of words. I meant I wanted to know if he had a history of this, of targeting vulnerable women. I'm not vulnerable. No. You're not. But he thought you were, and men like that. Matteo's voice went cold. They repeat patterns. Carol should have been disturbed by the implicit threat. Instead, she found herself asking, what did you find? 3 other women with similar stories on his dating profiles. All reported him for harassment or discrimination. Nothing actionable, but a clear pattern. Matteo's tone shifted. He won't bother you again. I made that clear when I called him an hour ago. You called him? Carol stood abruptly. Matteo. I was polite, mostly. I simply suggested that his behavior tonight was unacceptable, and that continued harassment of you would be ill-advised. You threatened him. I educated him about consequences. There's a difference. Carol should have hung up, should have blocked his number and counted herself lucky to escape whatever darkness surrounded this man. Instead, your sister, Lucia. Tell me about her. The change in Mateo's voice was immediate, the ice melting into something warm, almost vulnerable. What do you want to know? How you learned to sign? Why you learned? Mateo was quiet for a long moment. Carol could hear traffic in the background, the hum of a car engine. He was still out, conducting whatever business consumed his nights. I was 16, he finally said. Lucia was 8. Our mother had just died. Cancer, 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. Our father. He paused. He wasn't equipped to handle a deaf daughter, wanted to send her to an institution, said she'd never be able to function in the real world, that she was a burden he couldn't afford. Carol's throat tightened, so I took her, moved into our aunt's basement on the south side, got my GED, started working for my father's business to pay for Lucia's school, her therapies, everything she needed. Mateo's voice carried years of old anger. And I learned ASL because I refused to let her grow up thinking she was broken. Stayed up every night watching YouTube tutorials, practicing in mirrors until my hands ached. That's beautiful, Carol whispered. That's survival. Lucia is the only good thing I've ever done. Everything else, he trailed off, everything else is just trying to build a world where she's safe. Even if that means doing dangerous things. Especially then. Carol walked to her window, looking out at rain-slicked Chicago streets. What happened to your father? He died when I was 20. I took over the family business. All of it. Mateo's voice went flat again. I became what I needed to become. And what's that? Someone people fear. Someone who protects what's his. Someone who... He stopped. Someone you should probably stay away from, Carol. For your own good. Is that what you want? For me to stay away? The silence stretched so long Carol thought the call had dropped. Then, no, that's the last thing I want. Which is exactly why you should. What if I don't? Then I'll show you parts of my world you can't unsee. I'll put you in danger just by knowing you. Mateo. Carol cut him off. I'm a grown woman who survived meningitis, rebuilt her entire life from nothing, and faces prejudice every single day just for existing. I don't need you to protect me from choices. I need you to be honest about what those choices mean. Another long pause. Then Mateo laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. Lucia would like you. Yeah? She'd say you have fire. That's her highest compliment. Carol smiled. When do I meet her? You want to meet her? You spent 20 minutes tonight telling me about her school, her students, her obsession with teaching butterfly signs to kindergartners. Of course I want to meet her. Carol, Mateo's voice went serious. If you meet Lucia, if you come into that part of my life, there's no casual exit. She doesn't let people in easily. Neither do I. This becomes real. Maybe I want real. Real with me is complicated. I interpreted for a mob trial last month. Watched a man sign his confession about 3 murders while his family cried in the gallery. I understand complicated. That's work. This is different. This is... Mateo stopped. I'm trying to protect you. From what? You? Or from missing something that could be extraordinary because it's dangerous? No answer. Just breathing and distant sirens and the weight of a question Carol hadn't meant to ask so directly. Finally, Saturday, Lucia's apartment, noon. I'll send you the address. Mateo's voice carried warning and promise. But Carol, once you're in, once you see all of it, there's no unknowing me, no going back to before tonight. I don't want to go back. You might, after Saturday. Let me worry about that. Mateo exhaled slowly. You're either very brave or very stupid. You said that about yourself earlier. Maybe we match. Maybe we do. His tone softened. Get some sleep, Carol. Tomorrow you'll wake up and realize tonight was insane. And if I don't, Then I'll see you Saturday, and I'll introduce you to the only person in the world I'd die for." They said goodnight. Carol lay in bed, staring at her ceiling, listening to rain that finally began to slow. Her phone glowed with Mateo's address, South Side, a neighborhood she knew had history, had reputation, had the kind of power that didn't need to advertise itself. She should have been terrified. Instead, she fell asleep thinking about scarred hands shaping gentle words, and a dangerous man who'd learned a silent language for love. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. Carol changed outfits 4 times before settling on jeans and a burgundy sweater. Casual enough not to seem desperate, nice enough to impress Mateo's sister. Lucia, the person he'd die for. No pressure. Her phone buzzed. "Zoe, still think this is insane. Text me every hour or I'm calling cops." Carol smiled. "Love you too. We'll check in." The address led to a renovated brownstone in Bridgeport, surrounded by wrought iron fencing that looked decorative but felt protective. Security cameras perched on corners. A man in black stood near the entrance. "Ms. Monroe, Mr. Russo is expecting you. 3rd floor, 3B. Carol climbed stairs with unsteady legs. What was she doing? Meeting the sister of a man she'd known 5 days, who'd admitted to running crime operations, who'd educated Marcus about consequences. She reached 3B. Before knocking, the door opened. Mateo stood there in dark jeans and gray Henley, somehow more dangerous without the suit, more real, more solid. His damp hair suggested a recent shower. Carol caught Cedar in something darker. "You came," he said, relief beneath the words. "You doubted? I gave you 5 days to research me, to realize what you're walking into." Mateo stepped aside. "Most people run when they understand." "I'm not most people." "No, you're really not." The apartment surprised her. Spacious, light-filled, walls covered in vibrant artwork and photographs. Educational materials stacked neatly on a dining table. Bookshelves crammed with volumes on deaf education, child development, ASL. In the living room center, signing rapidly to Mateo, was Lucia. Petite, dark-haired like her brother, same sharp cheekbones and intense eyes. But where Mateo carried shadows, Lucia radiated light. Purple dress with butterfly patterns, hearing aids decorated with glittery stickers. When she spotted Carol, her face transformed into brilliant smile. "She's pretty," Lucia signed to Mateo, then turned to Carol. "Hi, I'm Lucia. Mateo won't shut up about you. Annoying and adorable." Carol laughed, signing back. "Hi, I'm Carol. Your brother is very annoying and adorable, so that tracks." Lucia's eyes widened. She grabbed Carol's hands, pulling her toward the couch. "You signed beautifully. Where did you learn?" "After I lost my hearing. Meningitis 5 years ago. Late deafened, like my friend Maria." Lucia bounced slightly. "She says it's like learning to be herself again." "Is that how it felt?" Carol settled onto the couch, aware of Mateo watching with unreadable expression. "Exactly. Like dying and being reborn as someone similar but different." Mateo brought coffee, somehow knowing Carol took cream and 1 sugar, then sat across from them. He signed and spoke. "I warned you. She doesn't stop talking." "You're one to talk. You called me at midnight about what to wear." "Midnight, Mateo." "I wanted to make sure I didn't look too—" He gestured vaguely. "Dangerous? Mafia-y? Like someone who kills with bare hands?" Lucia's signs were teasing but pointed. "Yes, that." Carol watched their rhythm. Easy love, the way Mateo softened around his sister. This was who he'd been before. Before their mother died, before the family business, before becoming someone people feared. "So," Lucia turned to Carol, "Mateo told me about the restaurant. That awful man. I'm sorry." "Thank you. Your brother made it better." "He's good at that. Fixing things. Protecting people." Lucia's expression turned serious. "Sometimes too good. He forgets to protect himself." Mateo shifted. "Lucia?" "No, she should know. You brought her here. That means she's important." The room's air changed, tension crackling. Lucia turned to Carol, signs deliberate. "My brother is trying to leave his life. The dangerous parts. He's been building legitimate businesses 3 years. restaurants, real estate, import companies that actually import legal things. He wants out. Carol's eyes flicked to Matteo, staring at his coffee. But leaving isn't easy. There are people who don't want him to go, who would use people he cares about to control him. Lucia, that's enough. Matteo's voice was sharp. No, it's not. You brought her into this. Stop protecting her from information she deserves. The siblings stared at each other, silent conversation in the tension. Finally, Matteo looked away. She's right, he said to Carol. I should have told you. I'm working on an exit. I have lawyers, accountants, connections with federal prosecutors, trading information for immunity, for Lucia and me. Clean slate, legitimate life. Carol's throat tightened. When? 6 months. Maybe less. Matteo met her eyes. But until then, I'm still in. Still running operations. Still dangerous. And after? After, I'm just a guy who owns restaurants. Boring. Normal. He smiled without humor. Probably too boring for you. You could never be boring. Carol signed before thinking. Lucia clapped. I like her. She sees through your brooding act. Tension broke. Matteo shook his head, hint of smile showing. They spent 2 hours talking. Lucia's school, Carol's interpreting, navigating hearing worlds. Lucia showed curriculum plans, teaching strategies, dreams of opening her own school. Matteo's funding it, Lucia said proudly. Buying a building in Pilsen, renovating into a deaf education center, opening next fall. Carol looked at Matteo with new understanding. That's what the legitimate businesses are for. Partly. Also because I'm tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of being someone my sister has to explain. His jaw tightened. Tired of becoming my father. You're nothing like him, Lucia signed fiercely. Not yet, but every day I stay in, I get closer. Carol reached across, placing her hand on his. Scarred knuckles, calloused palm, but gentle fingers closing around hers. Then we make sure you get out, she said simply. We? Matteo's dark eyes searched her face. If you'll let me help. Carol, you don't understand what you're offering. Then explain. Matteo glanced at Lucia, who nodded, then back to Carol. There's an FBI agent, Victoria Park, investigating my family 2 years. Also deaf, lost hearing in military. She approached me 6 months ago. Full testimony against the Commission for Immunity. And you said yes. Not immediately. Had to ensure Lucia's protection, that my exit wouldn't paint targets. His hand tightened. I've been documenting everything, recording conversations, photographing transactions, building their case. That's incredibly dangerous. Yes, which is why getting close to me is insane. Matteo pulled back. If anyone suspects I'm cooperating, they'll look at everyone in my life. Lucia has protection, but I can take care of myself. Not against these people. Stop, Lucia signed sharply. Carol isn't stupid. She understands risk. Let her choose. Her choice affects her safety. Her safety is her concern. Don't push her away because you're afraid. Carol looked between them and decided. I want to meet Agent Park. Matteo's expression shifted to shock. What? If I'm part of your life during these 6 months, I need the full picture. I work in the system. I understand confidentiality, legal strategy, witness protection. Carol's voice was steady. Let me help properly. Absolutely not. You're not dragging me. I'm walking in. Carol stood. Your choice is whether you trust me. Matteo stared, something warring behind his eyes. Finally, you're serious. Completely. Agent Park will think I'm insane. Probably, but I'm a federal court interpreter. I have security clearance. I'm not a liability. I'm an asset. Slow smile spread across Matteo's face. Lucia's right. You see through everything. Told you she was smart. Lucia signed smugly. Fine. I'll arrange it. Matteo crossed to Carol until inches apart. But once you're in this, once you know everything, there's no casual relationship, no easy exit. You'll know things that make you a witness, make you valuable, make you a target. Carol met his gaze. Then you'll have to make sure nothing happens to me. I will. With my life if necessary. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. His hand cupped her face. I'm trying hard not to kiss you right now. Why? Because my sister is watching, and once I start, I won't want to stop. I'm leaving, Lucia signed, grabbing her coat. Going to the store, back in an hour. Don't have sex on my couch. Lucia! Matteo flushed. She grinned, waved, disappeared. Silence settled, charged and electric. Matteo's thumb traced Carol's cheekbone. Last chance, he whispered. Walk away. Forget the dangerous man. Carol rose on her toes. I don't want normal. I want real. Real with me is complicated. I keep not caring. Matteo kissed her, urgent, desperate, tender. His hands cradling her face like something precious. Carol kissed back, tasting coffee and danger and promise. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. I'm going to fall in love with you. It's inevitable. Good, because I'm already halfway there. His phone buzzed. Text from his lieutenant. Problem at docks. Need you now. Reality crashed back. Matteo's expression hardened. I have to go. Business. The dangerous kind. Always. Carol caught his hand. Be careful. I will. He kissed her once more. Agent Park. Monday, I'll set it up. Then he was gone, leaving Carol in sunlit apartment, lips tingling, heart racing, knowing her life had become irrevocably complicated, and she wouldn't change anything. Monday morning, Carol stood outside a federal building in the Loop, her hands cold despite the coffee cup she clutched. Matteo had texted the address at dawn. Agent Park. 10 a.m. Don't be late. She hates that. The building was all glass and steel, anonymous among dozens of others. Carol had interpreted here before, custody hearings, disability claims, but never walked in as someone connected to an active FBI investigation. Her phone buzzed. Matteo. 3rd floor, room 304. I'm already inside. Carol rode the elevator up, her reflection staring back from polished doors. She looked professional, gray blazer, black slacks, hair pulled back to show her hearing aids clearly. She wanted Agent Park to see her as competent, not as some civilian complication. Room 304 was unmarked. Carol knocked twice. The woman who opened the door was tall, athletic, with sharp eyes that assessed Carol in 3 seconds. She wore a dark blazer, gun visible at her hip, and hearing aids that were military grade, far less discreet than Carol's. Ms. Monroe. Agent Victoria Park signed and spoke simultaneously. Come in. The room was small, conference table, recording equipment, files stacked in organized chaos. Matteo sat at the far end, looking dangerous and out of place in his expensive suit among government-issued furniture. Carol. He stood slightly, tension in his shoulders. Agent Park. Carol signed formally. Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for complicating my investigation. Victoria's tone was dry but not hostile. She gestured to a chair. Sit. We need to talk about why you're here. Carol sat, spine straight. I'm here because I'm involved with Matteo, because he's told me about his cooperation with your office, and because I want to understand what that means for both of us. Involved how? Victoria's eyes flicked between them. We're dating, Carol said simply. For how long? 10 days. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered. 10 days, and he's already brought you into a federal investigation that could get him killed. I asked to be brought in. Carol met her gaze. I'm a sign language interpreter for Cook County courts. I have security clearance. I understand confidentiality. Understanding confidentiality and living with a cooperating witness are different things. Victoria pulled out a file. Let me be clear, Ms. Monroe. Matteo Russo is providing testimony that will dismantle one of Chicago's oldest crime families. The people he's implicating have billions in assets and zero hesitation about eliminating threats. If they discover he's cooperating, everyone close to him becomes a target. I know. Do you? Victoria leaned forward. Because knowing intellectually and facing actual danger are very different. These aren't people who make threats. They make examples. Matteo's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent. Carol signed slowly, deliberately. 5 years ago, I almost died from meningitis. I lost my hearing, my career path, everything I'd planned. I had to rebuild myself from nothing while people treated me like I was broken. I've faced discrimination, harassment, and isolation every single day since. She paused. I'm not naive about danger, Agent Park. I just think some things are worth the risk. Victoria studied her for a long moment, then looked at Matteo. You're sure about this? No, Matteo said flatly. But she's right. She deserves full information to make informed choices. Fine. Victoria opened the file. Here's what you need to know. Matteo has been documenting his family's operations for 6 months. Money laundering, drug trafficking, extortion, contract murders. We have recordings, photographs, financial records. In 3 months, we move forward with indictments. Matteo testifies, and in exchange, he gets full immunity and exits the organization. What about Lucia? Carol asked. His sister is already in our protection protocols. We have surveillance on her apartment, her school, her routine movements. She's safe. Victoria's expression softened slightly. We're not monsters, Ms. Monroe. We protect witnesses and their families. But I'm not family. Not legally, which is why you being here is complicated. Victoria pulled out another document. If you continue this relationship, if you become a permanent part of Matteo's life, you'd need to enter the protection program with them. Carol's stomach dropped. Enter how? New identity, new city, new life. Everything you are now, Carol Monroe, court interpreter, Chicago resident, disappears. Victoria's tone was matter of fact. Your family wouldn't know where you went. Your friends would think you just vanished. You'd be a ghost. The room fell silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. That's the cost, Victoria continued. That's what being with Matteo permanently means. Are you prepared for that after 10 days of knowing him? Carol looked at Matteo, who was staring at the table, his hands clenched into fists. He looked like he wanted to argue, to push her away, to protect her from the choice she was facing. Can I think about it? Carol asked quietly. You have until we move forward with indictments. 3 months. Victoria closed the file. But understand, once you're in, there's no changing your mind. Once you know operational details, you become part of this, whether you want to be or not. Knowledge makes you valuable, and valuable things get targeted. I understand. Victoria stood, extending her hand. Carol shook it, firm grip, assessing eyes. For what it's worth, Victoria signed. I think you're either very brave or very stupid. I haven't decided which. Everyone keeps saying that, Carol signed back. Because it's true. Victoria glanced at Matteo. Walk her out, then come back. We have other matters to discuss. Matteo stood, placing his hand on Carol's lower back as they left the room. In the hallway, he pulled her into an empty stairwell, his expression torn between anger and fear. You shouldn't have come, he said. You should have stayed away from all of this. Too late now. It's not too late. You can walk away. Forget you heard any of this. Live your life. Matteo's hands cupped her face. I can't ask you to give up everything for me. Not after 10 days. Not after anything. You're not asking. I'm choosing. You don't know what you're choosing. Carol pulled his hands down, holding them between hers. Then show me. Stop protecting me from the truth and show me what your life actually looks like. The dangerous parts, the ugly parts, all of it. Matteo stared at her for a long moment. Then, tonight. I have business at the docks. Come with me. Will it be dangerous? Possibly, probably. His jaw tightened. But you want to see my world? That's my world. Money, power, violence. Are you sure? I'm sure. Then I'll pick you up at 8. Matteo kissed her forehead, gentle despite everything. Wear dark clothes. And Carol, if I tell you to run, you run. No questions. Promise me. I promise. He left her in the stairwell, returning to Victoria, and whatever dark business consumed his days. Carol stood alone, her heart racing, knowing she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Her phone buzzed. Zoe, lunch today? Need details about Mystery Mafia man. Carol typed back, lunch tomorrow. Tonight I'm seeing exactly how mysterious he really is. That sounds ominous. Probably. Carol, be careful. Always. But as Carol left the federal building, walking into cold October wind, she knew careful was the last thing she was being. Careful people didn't fall for dangerous men. Careful people didn't volunteer to witness criminal operations. Careful people protected themselves. Carol was done being careful. She'd spent 5 years rebuilding herself, proving she wasn't broken, fighting to be seen as whole. And now, for the first time since losing her hearing, someone saw her completely, saw her strength, her courage, her refusal to be diminished. If the cost of that was danger, she'd pay it. If the cost was giving up her old life, she'd consider it. Because Matteo Russo had stood up for her when no one else had spoken her language when the world stayed silent, had looked at her hearing aids and seen only Carol, extraordinary, fierce, worth protecting. That was worth risking everything for, even if everything included her life. Matteo's car arrived at exactly 8 p.m., a black SUV with tinted windows and a driver Carol didn't recognize. The man nodded once as she climbed into the back seat where Matteo waited, dressed in all black, his expression unreadable. Last chance, he said as the car pulled away from her apartment. I can take you home right now. No. Carol, you said I could see your world, so show me. She met his dark eyes. Stop trying to protect me from the truth. Matteo studied her face, then nodded slowly. Fine. But rules. You stay in the car unless I say otherwise. You don't speak to anyone. You don't interfere no matter what you see. Understood? Understood. They drove south toward the industrial docks, streetlights becoming sparse, buildings shifting from residential to warehouses and shipping containers. The driver, Matteo called him Chen, stayed silent, eyes constantly checking mirrors. What's happening tonight? Carol asked. Shipment coming in. Supposed to be electronics from overseas, but the manifest doesn't match what we're actually receiving. Matteo's jaw tightened. Someone's using my routes to move product without authorization. I need to know who and shut it down before it brings federal attention. Federal attention you're already cooperating with? Different kind of attention. The kind that complicates Agent Park's timeline. He glanced at her. The kind that gets people killed before they can testify. The car stopped outside a massive warehouse, its metal walls streaked with rust and graffiti. 2 men stood guard at the entrance, both armed, both watching the SUV with predatory awareness. Matteo's phone buzzed. He read the message, cursed softly. Problem. The shipment's already here, but so are people who shouldn't be. Salvatore's crew. Salvatore? My uncle, my father's brother. Matteo's expression went cold. He's been trying to take over my operations for 2 years. If he's here, it's not coincidental. Chen spoke for the first time. Boss, we should leave. This is a setup. Can't. If I run, I look weak. If I look weak, I lose control. Matteo pulled out his phone, texting rapidly. Calling in Vince and Marco. They're 10 minutes out. 10 minutes is a long time, Chen said. Then we're careful for 10 minutes. Matteo turned to Carol. Stay in the car. Lock the doors. If shooting starts, get down on the floor. Chen will drive you out. What about you? I'll handle it. He kissed her quickly, fiercely. Remember your promise. If I say run, you run. Then he was gone, stepping out into cold night air, his posture shifting into something commanding and dangerous. Carol watched through tinted windows as Matteo approached the warehouse, the guards parting for him with deference born from fear. Minutes crawled past. Chen's eyes never stopped moving, scanning shadows and roof lines. Carol's heart hammered against her ribs. Inside the warehouse, lights blazed to life. Through dirty windows, Carol saw Matteo confronting a group of men, 6 of them surrounding shipping containers, their body language aggressive. At the center stood an older man who shared Matteo's sharp features but carried them with cruel arrogance. Salvatore. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she could read the tension in every gesture. Matteo's hands moved in sharp, controlled motions. Salvatore laughed, spreading his arms wide like he owned the space. The men with him shifted, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Chen leaned forward. "This is bad. Boss is outnumbered." Carol's stomach twisted. She pulled out her phone, texting Mateo. "How long until backup?" His response came immediately. 7 minutes. Stay put. But 7 minutes felt like eternity when watching someone you cared about face down armed men who wanted him dead. Inside, the confrontation escalated. Salvatore shoved Mateo's chest. Disrespect calculated to provoke. Mateo didn't move, didn't react. His control absolute even as rage must have been burning through him. Then Salvatore made a mistake. He gestured toward the SUV, toward Carol, saying something that made Mateo's entire body go rigid. "Oh no," Chen whispered. Mateo moved faster than Carol thought possible. His fist connected with Salvatore's jaw, sending the older man stumbling back. The warehouse exploded into chaos, men drawing weapons, shouting, circling like wolves. But Mateo was already moving, disarming the nearest man with brutal efficiency, using him as a shield as gunfire erupted. Chen threw the SUV into reverse, but Carol couldn't look away from the violence unfolding through the warehouse windows. This was Mateo's world, not the careful businessman in expensive suits, not the gentle brother signing with Lucia, not the man who'd defended her in a restaurant. This was the monster he'd been shaped into, precise, lethal, terrifying in his controlled fury. A black van screeched into the parking lot. Vince and Marco poured out with 3 other men, all armed, all moving with military precision toward the warehouse. The odds shifted. Salvatore's crew retreated, dragging their wounded, throwing wild shots as they fled through a back exit. Within seconds, sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police, which meant everyone needed to disappear. Mateo emerged from the warehouse, blood on his knuckles, his shirt torn. He scanned the area, found the SUV, ran toward it. Chen unlocked the doors. "Drive," Mateo barked, sliding in beside Carol. "Now." Chen didn't need to be told twice. The SUV peeled away as police lights flashed in the distance, weaving through side streets with practiced ease. Behind them, Vince's van followed, both vehicles disappearing into Chicago's industrial maze. Carol's hands shook. Mateo noticed, caught them in his bloodied ones. "I'm sorry," he said roughly. "You shouldn't have seen that." "What did he say? Salvatore? What made you hit him?" Mateo's jaw worked. Finally. "He said he'd been watching me. Said he knew about the deaf girl I've been playing with. Said maybe he should introduce himself, show you what a real man looks like." Carol's blood went cold. "He threatened you," Mateo continued, voice like gravel. "He put you in his sights to get to me. And I—" He stopped, breathing hard. "I lost control. You protected me. I escalated a situation that could have been handled diplomatically. I showed my uncle exactly how to manipulate me." Mateo pulled his hands away, staring at his bruised knuckles. "This is what I am, Carol. This violence, this darkness. This is what you'd be signing up for." The SUV pulled into an underground parking garage. Chen killed the engine but didn't move, giving them privacy. Carol turned to face Mateo fully. "You think I didn't know violence was part of this? You think I'm naive enough to believe men leave organized crime through negotiation and polite requests? Knowing intellectually and witnessing are different. Stop." Carol's voice was sharp. "Stop deciding what I can handle. I watched you fight 6 men to protect me. I watched you control yourself when you wanted to kill your uncle. I watched you prioritize getting your people out safely over revenge." She caught his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "I saw exactly who you are, Mateo, the darkness and the control, and I'm still here. You're in shock. Tomorrow I'll still be here." Carol's thumbs brushed his cheekbones. "I'm not running. Not from this. Not from you." Mateo's control finally cracked. He pulled her against him, burying his face in her neck, his body shaking with adrenaline and relief and fear. Carol held him. This dangerous man who'd killed for her without hesitation, who'd protected her without thinking, who was terrified she'd leave him for being exactly what he'd been forced to become. "Agent Park was right," Mateo said against her skin. "You're either very brave or very stupid. Both, probably." Carol pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But I'm yours, if you'll have me. If I'll... Mateo laughed, the sound raw and disbelieving. Carol, I'd burn this entire city down to keep you safe. You're not the question. The question is whether you can live with someone who would. Then ask me properly. Mateo's eyes searched hers, dark and intense and vulnerable in ways she suspected few people ever saw. Carol Monroe, can you love a man who's done terrible things? Who might do more before this is over? Who comes with danger and violence and a past that never stays buried? Carol signed slowly, making sure he saw every movement. I already do. The kiss was desperate and tender and tasted like blood and promises neither of them knew if they could keep. But in that moment, in an underground parking garage with violence still echoing in their ears, they chose each other anyway. Because love didn't wait for safety. It didn't ask for guarantees. It just demanded courage to hold on when everything screamed to let go. And Carol had never been good at letting go. Carol woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a disoriented moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then memories flooded back. The warehouse, the violence, Mateo's bloodied knuckles and desperate kiss. She was in Mateo's penthouse. He'd refused to take her home last night, insisting it wasn't safe until he knew Salvatore's next move. The guest room was larger than her entire apartment, decorated in minimalist grays and blacks that screamed expensive emptiness. Her phone showed 23 missed calls from Zoe and 1 text from Mateo. Downstairs. Making breakfast. Come down when ready. Carol showered quickly, borrowed one of Mateo's shirts. It hung to her thighs, and padded downstairs barefoot. The penthouse was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, modern furniture that probably cost more than her car, art on the walls that looked museum quality. Mateo stood in the kitchen, cooking eggs and bacon, still wearing last night's torn shirt. His knuckles were wrapped in white gauze. He looked up when she entered, something vulnerable crossing his face. You stayed, he said quietly. Where else would I go? Away from me. Smart people run after what you saw last night. Carol crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. Good thing I'm not smart then. Mateo turned in her embrace, kissing her forehead. Agent Park called. She wants to see us. Today. Said it's urgent. Because of last night? Salvatore filed a complaint. Claims I assaulted him unprovoked, that I'm unstable and dangerous. Mateo's jaw tightened. He's trying to discredit me before I can testify. Make me look like a violent criminal whose word can't be trusted. But you are working with the FBI. They know the context. Context doesn't matter in court. What matters is perception. And a prosecutor asking a jury to believe a man who assaulted his uncle in a warehouse? Mateo plated the eggs, his movements controlled despite the tension radiating from him. Park thinks Salvatore knows I'm cooperating. That last night was about forcing my hand. They ate in tense silence. Carol's phone buzzed again. Zoe, relentless. She finally texted back, I'm fine. Safe. We'll explain everything soon. Love you. The response was immediate. You better be alive when I see you or I'll kill you myself. At 11 a.m. they sat across from Agent Victoria Park in the same federal building, same room, but the atmosphere was entirely different. Victoria looked furious. Explain, she signed sharply. Why my star witness assaulted a made man in front of 6 witnesses less than 12 hours after I explicitly told him to keep his head down. He threatened Carol, Mateo said flatly. He made it clear she's a target, I responded. You responded by jeopardizing 3 years of investigation. Victoria slammed a folder on the table. Salvatore's lawyers are already filing motions. They're claiming you're mentally unstable, that you're fabricating evidence out of paranoia and vendetta. Every piece of testimony you've given me is now suspect because you can't control your temper. He threatened someone I care about. I don't care if he threatened the Pope. Victoria's signs were harsh, angry. You don't get to be a person with feelings anymore, Mateo. You're a witness, an asset. You keep your head down, you follow protocols, and you let us handle threats. Carol watched Mateo's expression shutter closed, his jaw working as he fought to control whatever he was feeling. She'd never seen him look so trapped. "There's more," Victoria continued, her tone slightly softer. "Salvatore isn't just trying to discredit you, he's escalating. We intercepted communications this morning. He's putting out contracts, hits on anyone close to you. Lucia is safe because we have her covered, but Ms. Monroe..." Victoria looked at Carol directly. "You're exposed. You're not in our protection program. You're a civilian who witnessed illegal activity last night. That makes you both a target and a potential witness Salvatore wants eliminated." The room temperature seemed to drop. "What are you saying?" Carol asked. "I'm saying you have two choices. Enter witness protection immediately, tonight, and disappear until trials are over, or..." Victoria pulled out documents. "Or you cooperate formally. Give a statement about what you witnessed, become an official witness, and let us protect you properly." "If she gives a statement, she's tied to this forever," Matteo said. "She can't just walk away after." "She can't walk away anyway," Victoria said bluntly. "Salvatore knows who she is. He knows she was there. The moment she became part of your life, she became part of this investigation. I'm just making it official." Carol's hands felt numb. "And if I don't cooperate? If I just leave Chicago on my own? You'll be running for the rest of your life. Salvatore has reached beyond Chicago, beyond Illinois." Victoria's expression was almost sympathetic. "I know this isn't fair, Ms. Monroe. You didn't ask for any of this. But fair doesn't matter anymore. Only survival does." Matteo stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "This is my fault. I brought her into this. I should have stayed away." "But you didn't," Victoria interrupted. "And now we deal with reality, not should-haves. Ms. Monroe, I need an answer. Protection program or formal cooperation?" Carol looked at Matteo's rigid back, at the way his hands were clenched into fists, at the guilt radiating from every line of his body. She thought about her apartment, her job interpreting for courts, her best friend Zoe, her parents in Indiana who barely signed but tried. Her entire life, built carefully over 5 years of rebuilding herself. All of it would disappear, either into witness protection's manufactured identity or into the dangerous reality of being attached to Matteo's testimony. "If I cooperate formally," Carol said slowly, "I can stay in Chicago until the trials? With protection, yes. I can keep my job. Modified. We'd need to control your movements, but yes. And after? After Matteo testifies and this is over?" Victoria hesitated. "If we win, if the convictions stick, you'd theoretically be safe. Salvatore and the others would be in prison. But there are no guarantees, Ms. Monroe. There are always people on the outside. Always grudges that outlast sentences. So I'd never really be safe again." "No," Victoria admitted. "You wouldn't. That's the cost of being connected to this world." Matteo turned from the window, his expression devastated. "Don't do it, Carol. Take protection. Disappear. Live somewhere safe under a new name. Forget you ever met me." "Is that what you want?" "What I want doesn't matter. Your safety matters. My choice matters," Carol corrected. She stood, facing Victoria. "I'll cooperate formally. I'll give my statement, become an official witness, accept protection protocols. But I'm not disappearing. I'm not running. And I'm not leaving Matteo to face this alone." "Carol..." Matteo's voice broke. "No." She turned to him. "You stood up for me when a stranger humiliated me. You've protected me, been honest with me, shown me every ugly part of your world because I asked. Now it's my turn. I stand with you. Whatever that costs." Victoria watched them for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, I'll start the paperwork. Ms. Monroe, you'll need to give a detailed statement about last night. Everything you saw, heard, witnessed. It won't be pleasant. I understand. And you'll need to move. Your apartment isn't secure. We'll set you up in a safe location, probably in the same building as Lucia for efficiency." "When?" "Today. Pack what you need. Everything else stays behind." Victoria gathered her files. "Welcome to witness protection, Ms. Monroe. Your old life ends now." After Victoria left to prepare documents, Carol and Matteo sat in heavy silence. Finally, he spoke. You could have chosen safety. I chose you. You chose danger and uncertainty and a future that might not exist. Carol took his bandaged hand in hers. I chose love, Mateo. Real, complicated, dangerous love. The kind that doesn't run when things get hard. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. Mateo pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. When this is over, if we survive this, I'm going to marry you. Build you a life where you're safe and loved and never have to look over your shoulder. Is that a proposal? It's a promise. He kissed her softly. A promise I'll do everything in my power to keep. Outside, Chicago continued its indifferent rhythm. But inside that federal building, two lives permanently intertwined, bound by choice and consequence, and a love neither had expected, but both refused to surrender. Even if surrender meant survival, even if love meant war. Carol's new apartment was in the same building as Lucia's, 3rd floor, 2 bedrooms, walls painted sterile white. FBI-approved furniture, panic button by the door. Bulletproof windows she couldn't open, prison disguised as protection. She'd been there 3 days when Mateo's restaurant burned. The call came at 2 a.m., Mateo's name flashing on her screen, his voice ragged. Vincenzo's is gone. Fire. Lucia's staff were closing. 4 people hospitalized. Carol, they were all deaf. She was dressed and downstairs in 90 seconds. Mateo's SUV idled at the curb. Vince driving. Mateo in back looking like violence barely contained. His knuckles were bloody. He'd already hit something. Agent Park said you shouldn't come, he said flatly. Then she can arrest me. Carol climbed in. Drive. The restaurant was still burning when they arrived. Firefighters battled flames shooting through the roof of Vincenzo's, Mateo's flagship, the legitimate business he'd built specifically to employ deaf workers. The place that was supposed to prove he could be more than his father's son. Now it was ash and accusation. Mateo stood on the sidewalk, watching his dream burn, his hands clenched so tight his bandages tore. Carol touched his arm. He flinched like she'd struck him. 4 of Lucia's students work tonight, he said hollowly. Kids, Carol. 18, 19 years old. Just trying to make tuition money. And Salvatore burned them because they work for me. You don't know it was Salvatore. I know. Mateo's voice could cut glass. Fire inspector already found accelerant. Security cameras were disabled 30 minutes before ignition. This wasn't accidental. This was a message. Agent Park appeared from the crowd, her expression grim. She signed quickly. Salvatore has an alibi. He was at a charity gala downtown with 200 witnesses. Of course he was. Mateo's laugh was bitter. He pays people to burn buildings while he drinks champagne and collects tax deductions. The injured employees? Carol asked. Smoke inhalation, burns. One has a collapsed lung. Victoria's signs were efficient, clinical. They'll survive. But Mateo, you can't retaliate. That's exactly what Salvatore wants. Evidence that you're unstable and violent. I'm supposed to do nothing. Mateo's hands moved sharply. Let him burn my business? Hurt people under my protection? Where does it stop? It stops when we arrest him, when your testimony puts him away for life. Victoria stepped closer. 3 months, Mateo. That's all you need to wait. 3 months and this ends legally. 3 months for him to keep attacking? To kill someone next time? We'll increase protection. Your protection didn't stop this. Mateo gestured at the burning restaurant. Your surveillance didn't prevent 4 kids from ending up in the hospital. Silence fell, broken only by crackling flames and shouting firefighters. Victoria's expression didn't change. You're right, we failed tonight, but revenge fails permanently. You hit back. You give prosecutors ammunition to destroy your credibility. You give Salvatore exactly what he needs to paint you as the aggressor. Carol watched Mateo struggle, watched the war between who he'd been and who he was trying to become play out across his face. Finally, his shoulders dropped. Fine. No retaliation. His voice was dead. But I'm doubling security on Lucia, on Carol, on every property I own. Agreed. Victoria handed him a card. Fire inspector's preliminary report. They'll want your statement tomorrow." She left. Matteo stood watching his restaurant burn for another hour, Carol beside him, saying nothing because there was nothing to say. Some things didn't have comfort. Some losses didn't have words. When the flames finally died to smoldering ruins, Matteo spoke without looking at her. "This is what loving me costs, Carol. People get hurt. Dreams burn. Everything I build turns to ash because I can't escape what I am. You're not responsible for what Salvatore does. I'm responsible for being in a world where men like Salvatore exist, for bringing you into that world." He finally turned to her. "For being selfish enough to keep you here when you should run." "I'm not running. You should." Matteo's hands cupped her face. "You should run far and fast and never look back. Find someone safe. Someone whose past doesn't chase him with fire." Carol caught his wrists, holding his hands against her face. "I don't want safe. I want you. Even when wanting me means watching things burn." Even then. They went to the hospital next. The injured employees were young, scared, bandaged. When Matteo entered, signing apologies and promises to cover all medical costs, Carol watched their faces transform from fear to relief. Because despite everything, they trusted him, believed he'd protect them. She wondered if that faith would survive what was coming. At dawn, they returned to Carol's apartment. Matteo collapsed on her couch, exhaustion and rage etched into every line of his body. Carol sat beside him, pulling his head into her lap, running fingers through his hair. "Tell me about the restaurant," she said softly. "Before tonight. Tell me what it meant." Matteo was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "It was proof. Proof I could build something good. That I wasn't just my father's violence and my uncle's greed. Every deaf person I hired, every sign language class we hosted, every dollar that came from legal work, it was evidence I could change. You still can. Can I? Or am I just a killer pretending to be legitimate?" His voice cracked. "Maybe Salvatore's right. Maybe I'm exactly what I was raised to be, and everything else is just delusion." "No." Carol's hands moved firmly, making him look at her. "You're a man who learned sign language for his sister, who stood up for a stranger being humiliated, who's risking everything to testify against his own family. That's not delusion. That's choice. Choices don't matter if people keep getting hurt. Then we make sure no one else does. We survive 3 months. We get Salvatore arrested. We end this." Carol leaned down, kissing his forehead. "Together." Matteo pulled her closer, burying his face against her stomach. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you, and I'm terrified that's going to get you killed. I love you too. And I'm staying anyway." They fell asleep like that. Carol on the couch, Matteo's head in her lap, both of them exhausted and afraid and committed to a future that felt more uncertain with every passing day. Outside, Chicago woke to news of the fire. Salvatore read reports with satisfaction over breakfast. And Agent Victoria Park stared at surveillance photos, calculating how to keep witnesses alive long enough to testify. The war had begun, and none of them knew how many casualties there'd be before it ended. 2 weeks after the fire, Salvatore made his next move. Carol was leaving the courthouse after interpreting a custody hearing when the black sedan pulled alongside her. She knew immediately something was wrong. Too clean, too expensive, windows too dark for midday traffic. The back door opened. A man in an expensive suit gestured politely. "Ms. Monroe, Mr. Salvatore Russo requests a conversation. 5 minutes of your time." Every instinct screamed run. But FBI security was a block away. People surrounded her, and the man's tone was courteous, almost bored. Refusing felt more dangerous than complying. 5 minutes, Carol said, climbing in. Salvatore sat across from her, older than Matteo, but with the same sharp features twisted by cruelty and arrogance. He smiled like a shark. "Ms. Monroe, thank you for being reasonable." His voice was smooth, practiced. "I've heard so much about you. The deaf girl who captured my nephew's attention. What do you want?" "Direct. I appreciate that." Salvatore leaned back, completely at ease. "I want to make you an offer, a generous one. $500,000 deposited in any account you choose in exchange for you disappearing from Mateo's life. Carol's stomach dropped. You're trying to buy me off? I'm trying to save your life. Salvatore's expression didn't change. My nephew is cooperating with federal agents, preparing to testify against his family. That makes him a traitor, Ms. Monroe. And traitors don't get happy endings. Neither do the people they love. Is that a threat? It's reality. Mateo will testify, yes. He might even survive it. But you? Salvatore tilted his head. You're a vulnerability he can't afford. A weakness his enemies will exploit. Take the money. Start fresh somewhere safe. Let him face his consequences alone. No. Salvatore's smile thinned. You misunderstand. This isn't negotiation. This is mercy. I'm giving you an exit before things become unpleasant. And if I refuse, then you become part of the problem, and problems get solved. His tone remained pleasant, making the threat more chilling. I have no desire to hurt you, Ms. Monroe. You're innocent in this. But innocence doesn't grant immunity. Ask my nephew's restaurant employees about that. Rage flooded Carol's veins. You put 4 people in the hospital. I sent a message. The next one will be clearer. Salvatore pulled out a folder, sliding it across to her. Photos from this morning. Your best friend Zoe leaving her apartment. Your parents at their home in Indiana. Even Lucia, despite her FBI protection. Carol's hands shook as she opened the folder. Surveillance photos, recent, detailed, invasive. Everyone she loved, photographed without their knowledge. You see, Salvatore's voice was almost kind. I can reach anyone. The only question is whether I need to. Take the money, Ms. Monroe. Walk away. Let this family destroy itself without taking you down too. The car stopped outside the federal building where Agent Park's office was. 5 minutes, exactly as promised. Think about it, Salvatore said as Carol climbed out on trembling legs. You have 48 hours. After that, the offer expires and circumstances become fluid. The sedan drove away, leaving Carol on the sidewalk, clutching photos of everyone she'd ever loved marked as targets. She made it to Agent Park's office before her knees gave out. Victoria listened to Carol's story with increasing anger, her signs sharp and precise. He approached you in public? He's getting desperate. He has surveillance on everyone. Zoe, my parents, Lucia, despite your protection. We knew about the surveillance. We're monitoring his people, monitoring you. Victoria's expression was grim. But the direct approach is new. He's trying to isolate Mateo before the testimony. Will it work? That depends on you. Victoria leaned forward. Ms. Monroe, I need complete honesty. Are you considering his offer? Carol thought about $500,000, about disappearing, about her parents never knowing why she vanished, Zoe never forgiving her, but all of them being safe. No, she said finally, I'm not leaving. Even knowing he'll escalate? Even then. Carol met Victoria's eyes. But I need to know, can you actually protect everyone? Or is Salvatore right that you can't stop him? Silence stretched between them. Finally, Victoria sighed. I can't guarantee perfect safety. I can make it harder for him, increase surveillance, add security. But determined people find ways. You need to understand that. I do. And you're staying anyway? I am. Victoria studied her for a long moment, then nodded with something like respect. Then we accelerate the timeline. Mateo testifies in 6 weeks instead of 3 months. We move fast before Salvatore can make good on his threats. Will Mateo agree? He doesn't have a choice. This is happening. Victoria stood. Go home. Stay in your apartment until I contact you. And Ms. Monroe? Don't tell Mateo about Salvatore's offer. Not yet. He'll do something reckless if he knows his uncle approached you directly. Carol returned to her apartment, locked the door, and stood in her safe-house prison staring at surveillance photos of everyone she loved. Her phone buzzed. Mateo texting, "Dinner tonight. Need to see you." She typed back, "Yes. Your place. 8 p.m. Everything okay?" "Fine. Just miss you." The lie tasted bitter, but Victoria was right. Matteo would do something stupid and violent if he knew. And Carol couldn't let him throw away 3 years of planning because his uncle had threatened her. She had 48 hours to figure out how to survive this. At 8 p.m., Carol arrived at Matteo's penthouse. He greeted her with a kiss that turned desperate, his hands tangling in her hair like she might disappear. "I've been going crazy not seeing you," he murmured against her mouth. "It's been 2 days. 2 days too long." He pulled back, studying her face. "Something's wrong." "Nothing's wrong. Carol." His hands moved to sign, making her look at him properly. "I know you." What happened? She could lie. She should lie. But standing there, seeing the fear in his eyes, the desperate need to protect her, Carol couldn't keep it in. "Your uncle offered me $500,000 to leave you." Matteo went absolutely still. "When?" "This afternoon. He had surveillance photos of everyone I love. He said I have 48 hours to decide before things get fluid." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Matteo's expression shifted into something cold and lethal, the mask he wore when making impossible decisions. "Pack," he said flatly. "What?" "Pack your things. You're entering witness protection tonight. Full program, new identity, immediate relocation." "Matteo, no. This isn't negotiable." His hands moved sharply. "Salvatore approached you directly, made specific threats. You're not safe anymore. Not with me, not in Chicago. I already told Agent Park I'm not leaving. Then I'm overruling you." Matteo pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Victoria. You're gone by midnight." Carol grabbed his wrist, stopping him. "You don't get to decide this. I get to keep you alive. That's the only thing that matters. What about what I want, what I choose? Your choices put you in danger." Matteo's voice rose. "My uncle threatened you because of me. He'll kill you because of me. I won't let that happen. So I lose everything? My life, my identity, you, all of it? That's not protection, Matteo. That's prison. Prison keeps you breathing. I can live with that." Carol stepped back, signing slowly, deliberately. "I survived meningitis. I rebuilt my entire life. I fought every day to be seen as whole. And now you want me to disappear because you're afraid? I'm terrified. There's a difference. Then be terrified with me. Not for me. Let me make my own choices about my own life." Matteo stared at her, something breaking behind his eyes. "I can't lose you. I can't watch Salvatore hurt you because I was too selfish to let you go." Carol closed the distance, taking his face in her hands. "Then testify sooner. End this faster. Agent Park said 6 weeks. We can survive 6 weeks. 6 weeks is eternity when someone wants you dead. Then we make it shorter. We fight harder. We survive together." Carol pressed her forehead to his. "But I'm not running. Not from your uncle. Not from this life. Not from you." Matteo's arms wrapped around her, crushing her against him. "You're the bravest and most stubborn person I've ever met. Learned from the best." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the face of threats neither could fully control. Outside, Chicago glittered with lights and indifference. Somewhere in the city, Salvatore waited for an answer he wouldn't accept. And the clock ticked down to consequences none of them could avoid. Salvatore's deadline came and went. Carol didn't respond, didn't take the money, didn't disappear. For 3 days, nothing happened. The silence felt worse than threats. On the 4th day, Lucia was attacked. The call came at dawn. Agent Park's voice clipped and professional. "Lucia's fine. 2 men tried to grab her outside her school. Our security intervened. She's shaken but unharmed." Matteo was out the door before Carol finished processing. She found him an hour later at Lucia's apartment, his sister wrapped in a blanket on the couch, signing rapidly with shaking hands about men in masks, a van with no plates, hands grabbing her before gunshots scattered everyone. FBI security had killed one attacker. The other escaped. Matteo sat beside Lucia, his arm around her shoulders, his expression carved from ice and murder. When he looked up at Carol, she saw something terrifying in his eyes, the absolute certainty that he was done playing by rules. "I need to speak with Matteo," Agent Park said from the doorway. "Alone." They moved to the kitchen. Carol stayed with Lucia, who clutched her hand and signed. "He's going to do something stupid. I can see it on his face." "We won't let him," Carol signed back, hoping it was true. In the kitchen, voices rose. Matteo's controlled fury meeting Victoria's clinical authority. Finally, Matteo emerged, his jaw set, his decision made. "I'm testifying tomorrow," he announced. "Not in 6 weeks. Tomorrow. I'm done waiting for Salvatore to hurt people I love." "The prosecutors aren't ready," Victoria started. "Then they get ready tonight. I've given you everything you need. 3 years of evidence, recordings, documents, photographs. You have enough to indict the entire commission." Matteo's hands moved sharply. "I testify tomorrow, or I handle this my way." The threat hung heavy. Everyone knew what my way meant. Victoria's expression hardened. "You handle this your way, you lose immunity. You go to prison with everyone you're testifying against." "Then make sure I testify tomorrow." Victoria stared at him for a long moment, then pulled out her phone. "I'll make the calls." "But Matteo, once you testify, there's no protection anymore. You're a marked man. Salvatore's entire organization will want you dead. They already do. At least this way, some of them will be in prison when they try." Victoria left to coordinate with prosecutors. Matteo turned to Carol and Lucia, his expression softening slightly. "Pack essentials. Both of you. After tomorrow, we relocate immediately. New city, new identities, new lives." "What about your businesses?" Lucia signed. "Your employees? The Deaf Education Center? I'm signing everything over to a trust. The center opens as planned. Employees keep their jobs. Everything legitimate continues without me." Matteo's hands moved with finality. "I'm disappearing, but what I built survives." Carol watched him compartmentalize his entire life in minutes, dividing what could be saved from what had to be abandoned. It was brutal and efficient and completely Matteo. That night, they stayed together in Matteo's penthouse. Carol, Matteo, and Lucia in the living room with armed FBI agents outside the door. None of them slept. Lucia signed stories about her students, about the Deaf Education Center's curriculum, about dreams for the future that suddenly felt fragile. Matteo held Carol's hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, a nervous habit he'd developed, his way of grounding himself when control slipped. At 3 a.m., Lucia fell asleep against Carol's shoulder. Matteo carefully moved his sister to the guest room, then returned to Carol. "Last chance," he signed in the darkness. "Tomorrow changes everything. After I testify, there's no going back. New city, new names, constant vigilance. That's our life forever." "I know. You can still choose protection program without me. Victoria would arrange it. You'd be safe." Carol pressed her fingers to his lips, silencing him. "Stop asking me to leave. I've made my choice. I'm staying. Even knowing what it costs? Especially knowing what it costs." Carol's hands moved firmly. "I love you. Not the version of you that's safe and easy. I love the man who learned sign language for his sister, who stood up for a stranger, who's trying desperately to be better than what he was raised to be. That man is worth everything." Matteo pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway." They held each other until dawn, memorizing the feel of this moment before everything changed forever. At 8 a.m., Matteo entered the federal courthouse surrounded by FBI agents. Carol and Lucia watched from a secure room via video feed as prosecutors sworn him in as he began 3 years' worth of testimony. He spoke for 6 hours, named names, detailed operations, provided evidence that would dismantle the Russo crime family brick by brick. Carol watched Salvatore's face in the gallery, watched rage and betrayal twist his features as his nephew destroyed everything their family had built. At 2 p.m., Matteo finished. The judge called recess. Indictments would be issued immediately. Victoria appeared in their secure room. "It's done. Warrants are being executed now. Salvatore, the commission, everyone Matteo named, they're being arrested within the hour. And us?" Lucia signed. Transport leaves in 30 minutes. You're going to Portland. New identities, new lives, complete protection package. Victoria handed them folders. Everything you need to know about who you're becoming. Carol opened hers. Her new name was Sarah Mitchell, age 28, freelance graphic designer. No mention of deafness, of Chicago, of court interpreting. Her entire history rewritten in bureaucratic prose. You'll have support in Portland, Victoria continued. Deaf community contacts, job placements, housing. We've thought of everything. Except how to stop being who we actually are. Carol signed. Victoria's expression softened slightly. That part you figure out yourselves. Mateo returned under heavy guard, his face exhausted but relieved. He signed to Lucia first. It's over. You're safe now. Lucia threw her arms around him, crying silently against his shoulder. Then Mateo turned to Carol, pulling her into an embrace that felt like drowning and breathing simultaneously. Thank you, he whispered against her hair. For staying, for choosing this, for not running when you should have. Where you go, I go. Carol pulled back to sign clearly. New name, new city, new life. None of it matters as long as we're together. Sarah Mitchell. Mateo read from her folder, trying out her new name. I'm Michael Torres, apparently. Construction consultant. Close enough to the truth. Nothing about this is close to truth, but we'll make it work. He kissed her forehead. We'll build something real from these borrowed identities. 30 minutes later, they climbed into an unmarked van, Mateo, Carol, and Lucia, leaving behind everything they'd been for the uncertain promise of what they might become. Chicago disappeared behind them. Salvatore was arrested at his social club, screaming about betrayal and family loyalty even as handcuffs clicked shut. And somewhere in federal records, 3 people died on paper so they could live in reality. The price of freedom was everything they'd been, but the reward was each other. And sometimes that was enough. Portland rain felt different than Chicago's. Softer, relentless. Like the city was perpetually crying. Carol, Sarah now, she had to remember Sarah Mitchell, stood at the window of their new apartment, watching water streak down glass, trying to recognize herself in this borrowed life. 3 months since testimony. 3 months since becoming someone else. Michael Torres, Mateo, always Mateo in her head, appeared behind her, wrapping arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder, his hands signed against her stomach. You're thinking too loud. Just adjusting. Liar, you're grieving. Carol turned in his embrace. He was right, of course. She was grieving Carol Monroe, court interpreter, Chicago resident, woman who'd rebuilt herself after meningitis. That person was gone, erased as thoroughly as if she'd never existed. Zoe called my old number again yesterday. Carol signed. 14th time this month I heard the voicemail. She's crying, begging me to call back, to let her know I'm alive. Mateo's expression tightened with guilt. I'm sorry. Don't be. I chose this. Carol touched his face. I just didn't realize choosing you meant losing everyone else. We could arrange contact. Victoria said supervised calls. No, that makes it worse. Better she thinks I disappeared than knows I'm alive and won't talk to her. Carol's hands trembled slightly. Better my parents think I'm dead than know I chose to become someone else. They stood in heavy silence, holding each other against the weight of consequences that seemed heavier in Portland's gray light. Lucia, now Elena Torres, Mateo's younger sister in official records, knocked on their door. She'd adapted faster, throwing herself into Portland's deaf community, already teaching at a school for deaf children, rebuilding what she'd lost with determined optimism. Stop moping, she signed cheerfully. We're going out. There's a deaf culture event tonight. Music through vibration, visual performances, community gathering. You both need to remember the world exists beyond this apartment. I don't think, Carol started. Not a suggestion, a command. Lucia's hands moved firmly. You've been Sarah Mitchell for 3 months. Time to let her actually live instead of just existing. She was right. Carol had been going through motions, freelance graphic design work that paid bills but meant nothing, grocery shopping in neighborhoods where no one knew her, avoiding connection because connection required truth she couldn't give. That evening, they entered a community center transformed by deaf culture. No spoken words, just hands flying in conversation, music translated through floor vibrations and light displays, visual poetry projected on walls. Carol felt something unclench in her chest. This language, this community, this was real even when everything else was performance. A woman approached, signing, "New to Portland? I'm Jennifer. Welcome. Sarah, this is my partner Michael and his sister Elena." The lie came easier now. Sarah Mitchell, graphic designer, from Seattle originally. Moved to Portland for work. Simple backstory, rehearsed until automatic. Jennifer introduced them to others. Within an hour, Carol, Sarah, was laughing at signed jokes, discussing deaf education with Elena's new colleagues, watching Mateo, Michael, relax into conversation about construction consulting, the cover story close enough to his legitimate businesses that he didn't stumble. For the first time since Chicago, Carol felt almost normal. On the drive home, Lucia signed from the back seat. "See, life exists here too. Different life, but still life." "You're insufferably wise for 24, Mateo signed back. "Someone has to be since you two insist on dramatic melancholy." Carol laughed despite herself. Lucia had always been the light in Mateo's darkness, refusing to let circumstances define her, insisting on joy even when the world made it difficult. Back at the apartment, after Lucia left for her own place 2 floors down, Mateo pulled Carol onto the couch, signing, "She's right. We've been surviving instead of living. Is there a difference when everything's based on lies? The names are lies. This," he gestured between them, "this is real. Our love doesn't need true names to be true." Carol traced his face, the scar above his temple, the sharp cheekbones, the eyes that had seen too much violence but still looked at her with devastating tenderness. Michael Torres looked exactly like Mateo Russo. No surgery could change that. He'd always carry his past in his features. "I want to marry you," she said aloud, signing simultaneously. Mateo's eyes widened. "What?" "Marry me. Make it official. Sarah Mitchell and Michael Torres. Ridiculous fake names and all. I want the paperwork, the ceremony, the legal bond that says we chose each other." "Carol." "Sarah," she corrected gently. "I'm Sarah now, and Sarah wants to marry Michael, even knowing we're really other people, even knowing our marriage license will be built on federal lies. I want you as my husband." Mateo pulled her into his lap, cradling her face in scarred hands. "You're sure? Because married means permanent. Means no more questioning if this was worth it. I stopped questioning that the night you stood up for me in a restaurant. Everything since has just been confirmation." Carol kissed him softly. "So yes, I'm sure. Marry me, Michael Torres." "Yes." He kissed her back, desperate and tender. "Yes, Sarah Mitchell, I'll marry you. Tomorrow if you want. Today if we can find someone." They married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony at Portland's courthouse. Lucia stood as witness, along with Jennifer from the deaf community event, the first friend Sarah Mitchell had made, even if she'd never know Carol Monroe existed. The officiant signed the ceremony, making it accessible, making it theirs. When Mateo, Michael, signed his vows, his hands shook. "I promise to love you with my real name and this borrowed one, to protect you without controlling you, to build a life worthy of the sacrifice you made. You are my truth in a world of lies, Sarah. Everything else is performance, but this, us, this is real." Carol signed back, tears streaming. "I promise to choose you every day, in every name, in every life we're forced to build. You saw me when the world tried to diminish me. You stood up when you could have walked away. I love you, Michael Torres. I love you, Mateo Russo. I love you, whoever you need to be. Forever." They sealed vows with a kiss that tasted like salt and promises and the fierce determination of 2 people who'd lost everything except each other. The reception was small. Lucia's new colleagues, some of Sarah's freelance clients, Jennifer and friends from the deaf community. No family from before. No friends who'd known their real names. Just the life they were building from borrowed pieces. Late that night, in their apartment overlooking Portland's rainy streets, Mateo held Carol close, signing against her back. "Do you regret it? Giving up everything?" Carol turned to face him. "I regret that loving you required such brutal choices, but I don't regret loving you. That I'd choose in every life. Even this one, built on lies. Especially this one, because underneath the lies, we're more honest than we've ever been." They made love slowly, tenderly, two people who'd been forged in violence and loss, choosing gentleness despite everything. After, tangled together in sheets, Mateo's hands moved in the darkness. "Thank you for staying, for not running when you should have, for building this impossible life with me. Thank you for being worth staying for." Morning came with Portland rain and coffee brewing and Lucia texting about brunch plans. Carol, Sarah, watched Mateo, Michael, move through their kitchen, this dangerous man who'd learned to be gentle, this killer who'd chosen testimony over violence, this mobster who'd become her husband. Their life wasn't what either had imagined. It was smaller, quieter, built on foundations of federal lies and witness protection protocols. But it was theirs. And some mornings when Mateo signed "I love you" across the breakfast table, when Lucia burst in with stories about her students, when Sarah Mitchell looked in the mirror and saw Carol Monroe's strength staring back. Some mornings that was enough. Not perfect, not easy, not the ending either had dreamed, but real, honest, true. And love, it turned out, spoke loudest not in the names you carried, but in the choices you made. They'd chosen each other. Everything else was just details. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.